It was almost 3 in the morning when the sound of alarms cut through the silence of the early morning. The cold lights of the technology building began to flicker in sequence, as if the heart of the company were collapsing. In seconds, the entire central system stopped. Screens off, automatic doors locked, data inaccessible. The damage, calculated in minutes, already exceeded millions. The security director was urgently summoned. The IT team tried to understand the reason for the failure, but no one could explain what had brought down one of the largest server networks in the country. In the midst of that icy chaos of blue light and metallic noises, only one person moved calmly: the night cleaner, Louisa, pushing her cleaning cart through the corridors illuminated by emergency lights. While everyone shouted orders, she heard something different, a low, trembling, almost human sound. A meow. Following the sound, Louisa reached the server room, where hundreds of colorful cables descended from the walls like living veins of a steel creature. With each step, the meowing became clearer, and then she saw, among the wires, a small gray cat, curled up, trembling with fear, its eyes gleaming with blue reflections from the fault lights. It had sought shelter there, fleeing the cold of the street, but had ended up pulling cables, disconnecting circuits, and shutting everything down. The culprit behind millions in damage was just a frightened kitten trying to survive. Louisa knelt slowly, her heart racing, while on the other side of the wall, executives shouted about losses and responsibilities. Without hesitation, she switched off the main circuit breaker, climbed the ladder, and began to release, one by one, the wires wrapped around the little intruder's body. Each touch seemed to bring life back to the building. And when the last cable was released, the cat jumped into her arms, and the system began to restart. At dawn, the billionaire owner of the company arrived furious, demanding to know who had manually switched off the main circuit. When the engineers recounted what they had seen on the cameras, he fell silent. The images showed the night shift cleaner, saving not only the system, but also the small cat trapped in the wires. That morning, Louisa got a new shift, the day shift, and a new companion, the same cat that had almost destroyed everything. From that day on, he slept next to the cleaning cart, and everyone in the company learned that sometimes the biggest collapse serves only to remind us of the value of the hands that keep everything standing. Before we delve into this amazing story, tell me which city and state you're watching from. Leave a comment and I'll reply with gratitude. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like this video. We want to share more stories like this. The early morning hours stretched like a corridor of flickering lights, and the air inside the company seemed heavier with each passing minute. The machines breathed in intermittent silences, as if afraid to wake up. Louisa, still wearing gloves, felt her heart pounding to the rhythm of the alarms that came and went like a warning. She knelt before the small grey cat, now trembling, trapped in a tangle of wires thicker than its own body. The little animal's gaze mixed terror and innocence, and for a moment, the woman forgot the chaos. "It's okay, baby. Calm down, nobody's going to hurt you," she whispered. The security cameras, still powered by generators, recorded everything. The night cleaner alone, kneeling before a pile of technology, saving something that most engineers wouldn't even know where to look. She quickly examined the electrical panel, took a deep breath, and disconnected the main connectors. The lights went out completely. Outside, the head of security shouted on the radio, "Who cut the power now?" But she didn't hear. The sound of the wires being freed and the cat's soft meow were the only sounds that mattered. With steady hands, Louisa carefully pulled each cable, avoiding the shock that could burn her. The entangled cat gasped with fear, and at a certain point, she felt it surrender, quiet and trusting. When the last wire came loose, the small body fell into her arms, light and warm. Louisa wrapped it in her apron and breathed a sigh of relief. The building seemed dead, but she knew what to do. Observing the panel, she noticed that one of the main cables was poorly connected, a minor detail that could cost a fortune. She turned the key, manually reconnected the circuit, and waited. A buzzing sound ran through the walls. The lights began to cascade back on, the monitors shone again, and the system, previously collapsed, came back to life. Outside, the technical team rushed over, believing the servers had restarted on their own. No one imagined that the miracle of the early morning had a name, and that she was holding in her arms a small cat that was now purring, safe, enveloped in the arms of someone who never sought the spotlight, but always knew what it meant to care. When the sun streamed through the high glass windows, the company breathed a sigh of relief once more. And in the center of the room, a simple woman, her uniform worn and her hands stained with grease and dust, watched the cat sleep on her lap. The soft sound of its purring seemed to fill what the noise of the machines couldn't, the silence of gratitude. She looked around, smelling the electricity and air conditioning, and thought to herself, sometimes it's just a wire we need to reconnect, for everything to work again. Little did she know that the company owner, upon reviewing the recordings later, would see in those images something that not all the fortune in the world could buy: humanity. When billionaire Ricardo Montenegro arrived at the company that morning, the scene resembled a catastrophe averted by seconds. The courtyard was filled with tense employees, engineers exchanging accusations, and the sound of servers restarting still echoed through the walls. Ricardo stepped out of his car with a stern expression, his impeccable grey suit contrasting with the tired face of someone who had spent the entire night on emergency calls. "I want everyone in the conference room now," he ordered, and the firm sound of his voice silenced the room. While the directors hurried to bring reports and tablets, Luisa remained invisible in the corner of the hallway, her cat curled up in her apron, sleeping. She observed everything without saying a word, with that mixture of relief and fear. Fear that they would discover that she was the one who manually shut down the system, which, technically, violated all protocols. In the main room, the chief engineer presented the security camera footage. Ricardo crossed his arms and stared at the screen. The video showed the servers flickering, the general system crash, and then a simple woman entering the room alone. The executives exchanged glances, some laughing derisively. Seriously, it was the cleaning lady who turned everything off? Until the video continued. There was Luisa, kneeling, freeing the small cat trapped in the wires, her body tense, her hands trembling, but determined. When the screen showed the moment the building restarted, Ricardo remained in absolute silence. For a few seconds, no one breathed. He stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on the image of the woman and the cat. "She saved the system," he murmured. The engineer confirmed, embarrassed. "Yes, sir. If she hadn't manually turned it off, we could have lost all the servers." Ricardo left the room without saying anything more. He walked through the still dimly lit corridors until he found Luisa in the pantry, trying to feed the cat milk from a cup lid. When he appeared in the doorway, she stood up hurriedly, as if expecting a scolding. But the billionaire stopped in front of her and spoke in a voice that didn't sound the same as minutes before. "It was you, wasn't it? The one who saved everything?" She hesitated, looked at the cat, and replied simply, "I just didn't want him to die, sir. The rest I did on instinct." Ricardo observed the scene, the woman in her worn uniform, the hungry cat, the makeshift cup, and something inside him crumbled. "Sometimes instinct is smarter than any machine I bought here," he said, smiling slightly. That morning, the story spread through the hallways like a gentle breeze after a storm. The employees began to laugh, relieved, while the cat, now nicknamed Pixel, the little animal, became the company mascot. Ricardo asked that the animal have a name tag with a photo, and next to it, a new name tag for Luisa, now hired as a maintenance assistant. When the clock struck 8, the sun streamed through the windows and illuminated them both. The entire building shone again. And in the heart of that multi-million-dollar company, amidst screens, codes, and LED lights, the most valuable thing that remained was the gesture of a woman who never had power, but had soul. Because that night, amidst wires and fear, she not only restarted a system, she restarted what money had forgotten: human warmth. In the days that followed, the building that had previously pulsed only to the sound of processors began to have something new: a soul. The small Pixel, the cat that nearly brought down millions in technology, now slept on a blanket next to Luisa's cleaning cart, with a tiny name tag hanging from its collar that read "Wire Analyst." The symbol of bad luck became a mascot, and with it came a lesson that spread like wildfire among the employees. People who previously walked through the hallways without looking at each other's faces began to greet, laugh, and chat. The cold, automatic atmosphere gave way to something no innovation could have programmed. Ricardo Montenegro, the billionaire, noticed this in the very first week. For the first time in years, he began arriving earlier, without his entourage, without the glint of power in his steps, just a man trying to understand how a woman with a cloth and a giant heart had changed the energy of an entire empire. One Friday morning, Ricardo appeared in the server room, the same place where it had all begun. Luisa was there, cleaning the edges of the machines, and beside her, the cat slept curled up in a blue blanket. He approached and stood silently for a few seconds, simply observing the contrast between the metallic sheen of the cables and the simple calm of that moment. "Did you know I spent years investing billions to keep this system immune to failures?" he said. Luisa stopped cleaning, looked at him and smiled slightly. "And it was a little animal that showed where the error was, right?" Ricardo laughed sincerely, perhaps for the first time in a long time. "And a woman who had the courage to turn off what everyone was afraid to touch." He then handed her a simple envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter and a new name tag. "The company is made of people, not cables. From today on, you are responsible for ensuring that what keeps all this standing continues to function. And I'm not just talking about the systems." Luisa held the envelope with trembling hands, unsure what to say. The sun streamed through the glass windows, illuminating them both. Pixel woke up, meowed, and jumped into her lap as if sealing the moment. Outside, employees began to arrive, and the sound of keyboards and footsteps filled the air once more, but something had changed forever. The story of the cleaning lady who saved the system and the cat had become a legend within the company. A reminder that sometimes what seems like an error is just a cry for help, and that the true reboot doesn't happen on computers, but within people. That night, when everyone had left, the company lights went out one by one. Only one remained lit, the one in the server room. There, Luisa stood, holding Pixel in her lap, watching the panel now shining perfectly. She smiled, stroked the little creature, and whispered, "See, my little one, not every failure is bad. Sometimes it's what teaches the world to start over." And the soft meow that responded echoed through the cables, as if even the machines understood that in that company, finally, there was heart. The following month, the company was no longer the same. The building that once symbolized efficiency and technology now breathed humanity. The employees, once silent and hurried, began to stop in the hallway to pet Pixel, who circulated freely among the desks as if he were part of the system. Some said the cat brought good luck, others believed he was a reminder of humility, but everyone agreed on one thing. Nothing was more inspiring than seeing Luisa crossing the lobby in her new uniform, badge on her chest, and a serene smile on her face. Her gaze, which had previously avoided the floor for fear of being noticed, now met everyone's, and with respect. The night cleaning lady had become an almost legendary figure, a symbol of what truly kept that place running: care. Ricardo Montenegro, the billionaire, had also changed. He started talking to employees during breaks, visited departments he had previously ignored, and sometimes even brought food for the cat. One day, during a meeting with foreign investors, he stopped the presentation of charts and profits to tell the story of the human reset. "It wasn't a programmer nor an engineer who saved my company," he said, projecting onto the screen the image from the security camera showing Luisa holding the cat in her arms. "It was an invisible woman who saw what no one else saw, that the problem wasn't in the machines, but in the lack of sensitivity towards what is alive." The silence that fell over the room was absolute. When he finished speaking, he took a deep breath and concluded, "Since that night, I've understood that the greatest investment is recognizing those who work when no one is watching." Outside, Luisa cleaned the floor with her usual meticulousness, unaware that at that very moment the world inside was applauding. When Ricardo left the meeting, he walked over to her with a serene look. "Luisa, I have a proposal. I want you to train the maintenance team. You understand this building better than anyone here." She smiled, surprised, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Me? Train engineers, doctor?" He shook his head, laughing. "You understand wires and feelings. Nobody learns that in college." Later, at the end of the workday, when everyone had already left, Luisa sat in the hallway, illuminated by the blue light of the machines, and let the cat climb onto her lap. Pixel purred peacefully, as if he too knew he had found the home he was looking for. She looked around, the reflection of the lights dancing on the glass walls, and thought about everything that had happened. A small cat, a night of chaos, a simple gesture, and the whole world could be turned back on. Outside, the company's illuminated sign reflected in the dark sky, and for a moment seemed to say what everyone there knew, but no one spoke aloud. Not every failure is a mistake. Sometimes it's fate trying to teach the value of starting over. Months after the incident, a news report spread across social media with the title, "The Woman Who Reconnected a Company and Taught a Billionaire How to Feel." The news went viral. Thousands of comments spoke of Luisa's humility, the symbolism of the cat, and how small actions can change entire destinies. The security camera video, that moment when she holds Pixel with her grease-stained hands and looks at the blank panel, circulated throughout the country. And suddenly, that anonymous woman became an inspiration. Ordinary people, students, mothers, and workers began writing messages saying they saw themselves in her. The technological building, which previously only appeared in business pages, now featured in articles about empathy, humanity, and new beginnings. Inside the company, the energy was different. At the start of each shift, a panel in the lobby displayed the phrase that Ricardo had engraved in steel letters: "Care is the most advanced system that exists." Below her, Luisa's name tag and Pixel's photo were framed. Every time someone new was hired, they heard the story of the early morning hours when chaos turned into learning. Luisa, without realizing it, became the invisible link between the human world and the world of machines. She still cleaned the floor with the same care, but now she did it amidst smiles, greetings, and looks of gratitude. Sometimes Ricardo himself would stop by, leave a hot coffee on her desk and whisper, "Don't forget, Luisa. If the system fails again, we'll call you before any engineer." She would laugh, shaking her head, and Pixel would meow, as if confirming the agreement. On a cold night, months later, another power outage hit the city. The building's lights flickered, and for a few seconds silence reigned. Luisa looked at the ceiling and sighed. Not again. But before she could get up, she heard Pixel's peaceful purring. The cat was there, serene, watching the lights come back on one by one. No system went down, no wires were pulled. It was as if the building somehow had learned too. She smiled and picked him up. "See, my little one? Now the system is different. Now it has a soul." And that early morning, between the soft sound of the machines and the warmth of a sleeping cat, the woman who fixed the impossible understood that the true miracle was not in reconnecting wires, but in awakening hearts.